What are you doing? What are you doing here?
Seriously though, I don't know what these intros are anymore. I'm sorry in advance. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm really going to be going back to my roots. We're going to be talking about creating your first ever D&D character and kind of going through the character sheet, kind of just the creation process. Now, because creating a D&D character kind of has two different sides to it, the creative side and the statistical side, we're going to be splitting this topic up into two different videos. Today, we're going to be talking more about the statistical stuff, more of the first page of a D&D character sheet. What you put in this bubble, what you put in that bubble, what you fill in this line, and so on and so forth. But without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Welcome to D20 in Disguise. Alright, now I am going through a custom format of the D&D character sheet. There will be a link to that in the description in PDF form. And I will also have it on screen right now as I walk you through the first page. Alright, so we're going to start at the top left corner right there where it says character name. Now it's very important to distinguish between the player name and the character name. Now the player name is your actual name. That's what you're going to fill in when it says player name. But the character name is the name of the character which you're going to be playing in this fantasy world. Like, for example, a PC which I recently made named Amina Vanandi. She's this female monster hunter. She's really skilled at what she does. But the character name would be Amina Vanandi, while the player name, well, that would be my name. That would be my personal name. Next, we have level and class. Now, this goes into the nitpicking of the D&D system and such, but essentially, level and class, level, pretty simple concept to understand. Most tabletop RPGs have a level up system, where as you progress up the levels, you get more and more powerful as a character. And then class, it's just kind of your skill set, which is a pre-made set of skills revolved around an occupation or just a job. Like, for example, cleric, that's a D&D class, that's kind of an occupation. Other classes include barbarian, rogue, fighter. All of these are kind of sorts of occupations and niches, which most types of characters fit into. They're kind of generalizations. They're general niches, if you want to describe it that way. And next to the level and class blank, we have the race blank. Now, race in D&D is kind of different than what you would think it would be in the real world, obviously. It's kind of similar, but not exactly the same. Races in D&D span from human to elf, to dwarves, to half-elves, to halflings. All of these different races kind of intertwine in the world and have different cultures, much like the races in the real world. So you can kind of think of it like that, but with more of a fantasy spin, a very classic fantasy spin with your elves, dwarves, hobbits. All of those different races all have their separate different cultures and separate stereotypes. Like, for example, if you're running a half-orc character, then they're going to have a very different average set of skills than if you're running a halfling or a hobbit character. There's a size difference between those two characters. Halflings range from anywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall, maybe 3 to 4 feet tall, while orcs can tower from 6 to maybe even 8 feet. There's a difference in that, and obviously physique. Physique is a big difference between those two. So there's also skills which come along with your races, much like your classes. Next we have the player name. We already discussed that. That's your actual name. It's different from your character name. Character name is the name of your character. Player name is your personal name. Next we have experience points. Now this ties back into the leveling up system in D&D. Experience points work differently across different tabletop RPGs, and I'm not going to go into the details right now. The Player's Handbook covers this very well, and if you want to get more into the rules, I would highly, highly recommend getting a copy of the Player's Handbook. If you're not buying it, then borrow it from somebody else, and read through the first section. The first section covers all of the character creation, all of the leveling up, pretty much all of just the general stuff which you need to know when you're first starting out D&D and making your first character. Right next to the experience points, we have alignment. Now, alignment in D&D is a thing which represents your character's morals, what they're driven by. And D&D alignments are made up of two words. The first word, which can either be chaotic, neutral, or lawful, and then the second word, which can be either good, neutral, or evil. Now, these combine into a multitude of different alignments. You could have lawful evil. You could have, let's say, chaotic good. Now, the first word in this alignment, the chaotic, the lawful, or the neutral, that represents how you go about things, how your character goes about things. Now, if your character is lawful, that means in almost anything they do, they're going to obey the law. They're going to follow that as a moral guideline. Or if your character is chaotic, that means they aren't conformed to the law. They will do anything they have to do what they want. The second word, the good, neutral, or evil, what are their morals, essentially? If you have a good character, they're just trying to do good things. If you have an evil character, they have evil intentions. And these two words combine into a lot of different alignments. For example, lawful evil. It may seem as if the two words kind of clash with each other, but they don't really. It just means that your character has evil intentions, but they follow the law. Now, I would probably say most evil, corrupt nobles would probably follow that alignment. They are evil, they have evil intentions, but they follow the law, which doesn't really make it clash. That alignment works very well for some characters. Now, there's kind of a special alignment called neutral, or some people will call it true neutral. This is where both your first word, how they go about doing things, and your second word, their intentions, are both neutral. True neutral characters tend to really not care either way. They tend to just go with the flow, do whatever they have to accomplish whatever they need to do. They're very freeform, not tied down by moral boundaries. Alright, so now that we've gotten through the top row right there, we've gotten through all of kind of the basic information, we're going to move to that left kind of column right there, with the 6 little larger bubbles right there, and the 3 little boxes below and above the little bubblings. Let's start with the row to the far left. Those are your 6 core skills, the 6 core skills of your character, and how good they are at each of them. Let's go through each of them and kind of explain what this means. You have strength, their physical physique, how much they can lift, how much pain they can take, all of that kind of stuff. We have dexterity, how nimble they are, how quick they are, how agile they are. We have constitution, how hardy they are. Are they thin and frail, or are they beefy and can they take a lot of hits? Then we have intelligence, how just plain intelligent they are. And then the next one, wisdom, can be confused with intelligence. So I'm going to cover this because when I first started playing D&D, I know that I was confused about the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Now, intelligence is just pure data. How much information do you know? While wisdom is how much you've experienced. How much experience do you have, and therefore, how can you handle situations better? And then you have charisma, your social skills. How good you are in crowds, how good you are around people. And those six core skills are your 6 attributes of your character. With these scores, numbers are attached to them. I'm going to explain it very simply, but if you want me to go more in depth on this next episode really quickly at the beginning, please tell me in the comments. I would love to. With your core attributes, 10 is the average. 10 is the average number. 10 is the average amount of skill you have in that attribute. Like for example, if you had a 10 in strength, you're averagely strong. If you had a 10 in dexterity, you're averagely fast. If you have a 10 in wisdom, you've had some experiences but aren't overly wise. You're averagely wise. Now, 20 is the max number that you can naturally have. 20 in any score is very high. For example, if you had a 20 in strength, I would say you would be the top 1% in that attribute. If you took 100 different people, just randomly pulled 100 different people, including you would be stronger than the other 99 on average. But what does the bubble underneath the square for each attribute mean? I'm happy you asked. So the little bubble underneath each attribute is what you call the ability score modifier. Now, the technical term for each of those different core skills are ability scores, and the bubble underneath is the ability score modifier. The modifier is a number determined by the ability score itself, that number which can generally not go above 20 and has an average of 10. An easy formula to find an ability score modifier from any ability score goes like this. Subtract 10 from your ability score, divide by 2, and round down. That will usually give you your correct ability score modifier. If you want to think about things a bit simpler, because 10 is the average, your ability score will be +0. It will be neutral. While your 20 will be +5. The most you can generally get just from an ability score modifier. And just so you know, yes, you can have ability scores underneath 10. You can have ability scores, I believe, at 1. Not sure about that. I have never seen that before. But I'm pretty sure you can have ability scores of 1. In that situation, you'd have -4. Let's just run the algorithm one time. 1 minus 10, that's -9, divided by 2, -4.5, rounded down, -4. There's your ability score modifier. So we are going to skip inspiration. Inspiration is kind of a thing which you should probably ask your GM about, because it varies from game to game. It varies from table to table if your GM uses inspiration. Inspiration is interesting, to say the least. Next, we have proficiency bonus. Proficiency bonus gradually goes up as you level up, starting at, I believe, +2, and slowly going up as you level up. Your proficiency bonus is essentially a small bonus you get to any roll which you make when you use a skill which you're proficient in. Now, when you're proficient in a skill, it just means you've trained in that skill, you're good at it. Like, for example, a ranger, they would definitely have proficiency in, for example, survival, or tracking, or something like that. So they would get their proficiency bonus added to that roll, if they made a roll for tracking or survival. Next, we have saving throws and skill bonuses. So essentially, saving throw bonuses, as you can see, they have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. So whenever you make a saving throw, if you're proficient in that saving throw, you will add your proficiency bonus to the result of your roll for that saving. Generally, when you're making a saving throw for just a plain ability score, you don't add anything to the roll. It's just flat out roll. And whatever you get, that's your result. But if you're proficient in that saving throw, in that ability score for that saving throw, you can add your proficiency bonus. Next, we have skill proficiencies. Let me just list out all the skills. You have acrobatics, animal handling, arcana, athletics, deception, history, insight, intimidation, investigation, medicine, nature, perception, performance, persuasion, religion, sleight of hand, stealth, and survival. Now, that's a long list, I know. But all this means is, what are you naturally good at? If you're a thief, then you would be good at sleight of hand, essentially just stealing things with nimble fingers, if you don't exactly know what sleight of hand means. It's not a term which is commonly used. Now, what's that grayed out little abbreviation right next to each skill? Well, each of those represents an ability score, which you talk about. Strength, dexterity, constitution, so on and so forth. Each of those ability scores has a small abbreviation. Strength is STR, Dex is DEX, Constitution is CON, Intelligence is INT, Wisdom is WIS, and Charisma is CHA. This is just an easy way of abbreviating your ability scores. Each of these skills here kind of corresponds with one of the ability scores. For example, survival, that would be wisdom, because your experience in the wilderness would help you survive in the wilderness. Or history, that would be intelligence, because it's just raw information. Just remembering your history of that ruin or that magical item. It's just remembering that as raw information. Or for example, let's see, there we go, deception. That would be charisma, because to deceive someone, you have to socially interact with him. That just makes sense. But how do you calculate the bonus which you get to a skill check which you're proficient in? Well, first you add your proficiency bonus if you're proficient in the skill which you're making the check for. For example, if you are a rogue and you are trying to make a stealth roll, you would probably be proficient in that, so you'd add your proficiency bonus to the roll first, and then you'd add your dexterity ability score modifier to that as well, because as you can see, stealth corresponds to dexterity, which obviously makes sense. You have to be quick and agile to stay out of sight. Below that we have the little bubble which says passive perception. Passive perception is, in a nutshell, essentially how well you can pay attention to things when not trying to pay attention to them. For example, if your party is traveling down a road and suddenly a thief sneaks up behind them, but they're obviously not trying to sense a thief, they're not trying to look for a thief, you would probably make them just use their passive perception. Now, passive perception has a base of 10, and then depending on your wisdom modifier, goes up from there. So let's move on over to the two little adjacent grayed out boxes nearer to the top right. First you have your armor class. That's pretty simple. How hard it is to hit you. Not necessarily from heavy armor, but also from agileness. How quickly you can dodge out of the way. It doesn't just apply to armor. It does say armor class, but it's just how hard it is to hit you in combat. Next to that we have max HP. Max health points, it's just the max amount of damage which you can take normally. Next to that we have temporary HP. Temporary HP is HP which can go beyond your max HP because of maybe spell effects or abilities which add extra HP onto that, but aren't permanent. They're temporary, as the name implies. Below that we have current hit points. Usually this is the same as your max hit points, but if you've taken damage, you deduct the amount of damage which you've taken from your max hit points, and you've got your current hit points. In that second grayed out box, we have firstly hit dice. Now, in the D&D system, there's a very specific way which you figure out your max HP. Firstly, you use your constitution modifier. That makes sense, how hardy you are, how much damage you can take. But depending on your class, you have a certain amount of hit dice. For example, barbarians, they have significantly more hit dice than, let's say, a bard. Because of their lifestyle, they would be much beefier, the barbarian, than the bard. So, barbarians have D12s as their hit dice, while bards, I believe, had D6 or D8, one of the two. Next, we have initiative. Initiative is the order of combat. Who goes first in combat? Who is quick enough to make the first move in combat? Depending on your skills, especially your dexterity modifier, you will get a special bonus to your initiative roll. Like, for example, if you have a dexterity of 16, just using our formula, you would be able to find out that you have an ability score modifier of +3. So you would get a +3 to every time you roll initiative. So you have a higher chance, you have more consistency on you going earlier than your opponents or other allies. Below that we have speed. Speed is how fast you can move in combat. Generally it ranges from 20 to 40 feet per round, and by the way, a round is 6 seconds in game time. 20 to 40 feet, depending on your race, class, all of that stuff. For example, a halfling can't move near as fast as a wood elf. Then we have vision. Vision is usually left blink, except if you have something like dark vision. Dark vision, as the name implies, allows you to see in the dark. Depending on your class, race, and your abilities, this usually ranges from either 60-foot dark vision to 120-foot dark vision. But usually that is left blink, except if you're a drow elf or some other race which allows you to see in the dark. Below those two grayed out bubbles we have attacks and spellcasting. Pretty straightforward, just the different attacks which you can make or different attack spells which you can make. It's just a nice little bubble so that you have all of your spells and attacks ready at a moment's notice. You have all of their attack bonus, and their damage, and their range, and their ammo, and used ammo. Pretty straightforward, we're not going to cover that. So we're just going to move on down to features and traits. Features and traits are the innate abilities of your character. For example, if you're a monk, which is trained in the art of not using weapons, unarmed combat, they would have an innate ability that boosts the amount of damage which they do with unarmed strikes, for example. They're just innate abilities which change how your character plays in either combat or really in any other situation. We are moving on down to inventory and equipment. This is essentially just all of the gear and stuff which your character has. Maybe your character has a backpack, a bedroll, a tent, a length of rope. All of this would be included in their inventory. Now, what are these little tabs on the left of the inventory and equipment slot? You can see the C, S, E, G, P. What does that mean? This is your money count. And all of those different letters represent different currencies, different types of currencies, generic currencies. The C represents copper pieces. The S represents silver pieces. The E represents electrum pieces. The G represents gold pieces, and the P represents platinum pieces. Now, there's all sorts of different conversions in D&D. 10 gold pieces equals 1 platinum piece. I believe that 5 copper pieces equals 1 silver piece. There's a bunch of different conversions, but when you first make your character, you will just get a set amount of gold pieces, and you can go from there. Left of your inventory are the other proficiencies and languages. Obviously, you would include all the languages which your character is fluent in this box, but you would also include other proficiencies, including proficiencies in armor, weapons, musical instruments, gaming kits, all sorts of other things. For example, if you have a very light scout, they would definitely not be used to wearing heavy plate armor, but they would be used to wearing maybe light leather armor, so they would be proficient in light armor. Or maybe you have a dashing assassin. They would not be used to using a giant 8-foot battle axe, but they might be used to using a blow dart dipped in poison, so they would be proficient with a blowgun. Musical instruments especially goes for bard. Depending on what musical instrument you're proficient in, determines what type of music you play as a bard. And I think that's about it. We kind of burned through the first page, and I honestly think that is a very good point to stop on. We covered pretty much all of the basic stuff, I'd say. Everything which you really need to get started, and more of the statistical side than anything else. But in part 2, we are going to be discussing the second page of your character sheet, and this is more of the creative stuff. Your appearance, your portrait, your backstory, your bonds, flaws, and ideals. All of that more personality-based stuff, which really fleshes out how you're going to play your character at the table. Now, if you did enjoy this video, then please hit that like button hit that subscribe button. And if you want more of these introductory videos, then please tell me that in the comments. I absolutely love seeing comments where people say, oh wow, I was afraid of this, and you really helped me branch out and stop being afraid of that. Or, wow, this was so informational, thank you so much for the video, keep up the great work. I appreciate those so much, guys, and it really makes my day when I see one of those. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Keep on creating, and I will see you in the next video.
Let me go.